Hello everyone and welcome to Chess5. Today I am going to show you the game between Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura. This game is from the FTX Crypto Cup, played in 2021. And this game is from the quarterfinals, round number 4. So obviously these two players are like rivalry. So this game is going to be a very interesting game. I personally feel it. Magnus Carlsen is white and Nakamura is black. So without any further ado, let's start the game. So Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces started with 1e4 and Nakamura replied with 1e5. Magnus played knight f3, knight c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5, all normal stuff. Castle, knight to f6, d3, castle, h3, d5. Here at the place of d5, d6, rook e8, h6, all are normal moves. d5 even also normal move. So after d5, e into d5, knight into d5, a4, grabbing some space on the queen side, bishop to e6, knight to g5, planning to grab the bishop on e6. So bishop to f5, queen to f3, attacking the knight on d5 as well as the bishop on f5. So knight to e7, c3, planning to play b4 to gain some space on the queen side, or even d4. So h6, kicking the knight from the g5 square, knight to e4, bishop to d6, and now b4, gaining space on the queen side. a6, knight to d2, king to h8. The idea of playing king to h8 is now black is going to play perhaps bishop to g6 and f5 in the future, and planning to do some attack on the white king. So after king to h8, white played bishop to a3, bishop to g6, planning to play f5, knight into d6, c into d6, b5, knight to a5, bishop to b4, a into b5, a into b5, and now b6, simply protecting the knight on a5. Here white played bishop to d5, attacking the rook on a8. So black played rook to c8, c4, f5, opening up, pushing the black pawn, so that perhaps e4 can be played in the future, or even f4. So now bishop to e6, attacking the rook on c8. So rook to b8, bishop into a5, b into a5, and now d4. Now black is having three options: whether to capture the pawn on d4, or whether to push the pawn, or whether to just simply put the pawn on e5 and play some another move. So here Nakamura played rook to f6, and this move was a mistake by Hikaru Nakamura. A better move at the place of playing rook to f6 could be to simply play bishop to e8. The idea of playing bishop to e8 is, as you can see, white pawns on the queen side are very advanced. So to stop those pawns to get any further, bishop to e8 is a fine move, because now white cannot push the c pawn as the b pawn will fall. So at the place of bishop to e8, Nakamura decided for rook to f6, and now white played d5, cementing the bishop on e6. So bishop to f7, asking the white bishop whether he wants to trade the bishops. So now bishop into f7, rook into f7, and now knight to b3, planning to capture the pawn on a5 with the help of knight and the rook. So rook to a8, protecting the pawn with the rook as well as the queen. So now c5 by Magnus Carlsen, and c5 was a blunder. A better move could be simply playing rook to a3 followed by rook fa1, and simply going to capture the pawn on a5. This is the normal idea, but what Magnus played was a blunder, and it equalizes the position. After playing c5, black played a4, planning to capture the knight on b3, and the next move which Magnus played was, it requires a lot more guts, because the move is c6. white is just giving up the knight for just pushing up one pawn. Here in the game, Nakamura played queen to b6, didn't capture the knight on b3. But what if he would have captured the knight on b3? Then white would have played rook into a8, queen into a8, queen into b3, queen to a5, planning so that white cannot push the pawn. He will grab the d5 pawn. But white still pushes the pawn to b6, queen into d5, queen into d5, knight into d5, and now b7, preparing to make a queen on b8. So rook to f1 is forced, rook to f8, and now comes rook to d1, attacking the knight on d5. So knight to c7, rook into d6, and now e4, rook to d7, knight to a6, and now c7. Now white is going to make a queen. So the fourth move for black is to capture the pawn with the knight. Knight into c7, rook into c7, and now if rook to b8, then simply rook to c8 check, rook into c8, b into c8 queen, and it's going to be game over for black. So after c6, Nakamura decided to play queen to b6. Here Magnus played queen to d3. Here rook to b8. Rook to b8 was a mistake by Hikaru Nakamura, because after playing rook to b8, black is just giving up the pawn on a4 for free. A better move could be to play rook f to f8. Plan is to capture the knight at in the next move, or to play rook f to b8 and put pressure on the b5 pawn. So rook f to f8 was a nice move, would have been a nice move if Nakamura would have played it. But at the place of rook f8, Nakamura played rook a to b8, which was a mistake. And now comes rook into a4, knight to g6, rook to b4, and now knight to f4 by Nakamura. And now Magnus Carlsen played a fantastic move, rook into f4, and it requires guts because white just gave up an exchange sacrifice. The idea of giving an exchange sacrifice is after rook into f4, e into f4, we can see the d4 square as well as the e6 square are very weak. So Magnus Carlsen gone for it by playing knight to d4. First of all, white is protecting the pawn on b5 with the queen and the knight. Second, the knight can jump to perhaps e6 or can capture the pawn on f5 in the future. So we can say knight is just like a beast. Yeah. So after knight to d4, black played f3 because black have to do something. So white played rook to c1, just ignoring the f pawn. Black played rook to a7, knight to e6, rook to a2, and now white played queen to d4. And at this position, move number 37, Hikaru Nakamura with the black pieces resigned the game, and Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces won the game. This was a very fantastic game by both the players. But let's see why Nakamura resigned the game in this position. What is happening? First of all, white is checkmating the black king on the g7, as you can see, with the help of the knight and the queen. So it is forced for black to trade the queens to continue the game. So if the game would have continued by playing queen into d4, knight into d4, rook to d2, here's c7 by white, attacking the rook and also preparing to make a queen. So rook to c8 is forced, and now white plays b6. Here rook cannot take the knight because b7 wins the game on the spot. So after b6, black is forced to play rook to b2, rook to c6, and here black plays king g8, trying to bring the king near the pawns. But now comes knight into f5, king to f8, and now knight into d6, preparing to make a queen, and black cannot stop it. So after rook 8, b7, rook 8 1 check, king s2, f into g2. Black is trying his last hope, but now white simply checkmate the black king in 3 moves by playing c8 queen, check, king e7 is force, queen e6 check, king f8, and queen f7 checkmate. So it was a fantastic game played by both the players, Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru Nakamura. So in the first game, both the players scored 2 points, and Nakamura won the first and the third game with the white pieces, and Carlsen also won the game with the white pieces, second and the fourth round. And this is the game of the fourth round, Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura. If you like this game and you are new to my channel, then please subscribe to my channel and please like the video. Thanks for watching the video, and bye bye.